Now we're saying that Great Zimbabwe, according to what we have, is archaeological evidence, was built and occupied by the ancestors of the Karanga people. From around the 12th century, like I was saying before, these people, the last non-king left in 1450, the 15th century. These people, among other economic activities they were involved in, were farmers first and foremost. They were cultivating crops. They were also keeping livestock. Before these people ever came to Great Zimbabwe, they were at a place called Mapungubwe, which is in the Limpopo province. From around the 9th century, somewhere about the 13th century, they were gradually moving up into Zimbabwe, this place that we call Great Zimbabwe today. This word Zimbabwe comes from the stone walls that we're going to see today. It simply means a big house of stone. Big house of stone. That is when it is one. But when there are many, we say Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe. Yes. But when it is one, Zimbabwe. So this civilization started while they were still there at Mapungubwe. When they came to Great Zimbabwe, one of the attractions was good arable land for farming and also good pasture for the livestock. The availability of the granite material that we're seeing. Great Zimbabwe is surrounded by many granite domes. What these people would do was to make a fire on top of a granite outcrop, and then when it got hot, they would then pour water. Sudden contraction of the stone made it to break into blocks of stones. This was a late Iron Age period. These people could make their own iron tools like hammers and chisels. So they would take the blocks of stone and later shape them using the hammers and the chisels into usable bricks. Then obviously there were specialized masons who used to build the walls, you know. And then when they came here, they also considered that Great Zimbabwe is surrounded by 4 major rivers, because they were involved in intercontinental trade, like I was saying. We have what you call, once we get up there, we're going to see the Mutirikwi. During the days of Great Zimbabwe, it was like a perennial river. It was not seasonal, it was just perennial river. But it was dammed in 1958 to become a lake. Once it became, it was one of our biggest inland lakes. Although today it has been superseded by Tokwe Mkosi. Then we have Mutirikwi, Runde or Londi. We have Tugwi, Tokwe Mkosi. Then we have Chirez River. Wherever they settled, they also considered that they were near these large water bodies. Why? They wanted to get gold. It was alluvial type of gold they were getting. Alluvial. So the miners would go there, get the nuggets of gold, and they used gold was their #1 item for trade. Although they were also trading in animal skins and ivory, but gold was the #1 item for trade. Here at Great Zimbabwe, it is estimated that they used to get about 25 tons of gold a year. The sad thing about our ancestors is they did not realize the true value of gold. That they were giving away the gold for cheap things like, glass beads, clothes, cosmetics, We may understand if we talk about spices, but still it wasn't worth that. They were giving, but they put a premium on iron. Because iron could make tools. So practical society. They wanted the axes, they wanted the spears, they wanted the knives, So they thought iron had more value than gold. To them, it didn't matter. One of the things that inspired these people was their religion. Their religion. these people believed that they were believing in one God. Mari, that's Mari. But today we know that this people's religion was also called the Zivaguru. That's a big pool. We're talking about large water bodies around. So their religion, and even the symbols of their religion, were derived from the waters. One, we have the African fish eagle. Then we have the crocodile. They believe that ancestral spirits, which were a central part of their religion, lived in deep waters. So they adopted the crocodile to represent the ancestral spirits. And then the African fish eagle was like a divine messenger. According to oral history, they say that when they came here from Mapungubwe, remember we said these people coming from Mapungubwe, they came to Great Zimbabwe. It is said their leader was called Shiriedenga, the bird of the skies. So they say that they were led here. Apart from the advantages, we are talking about the granite, arable land, grazing land, water bodies, microclimate that favored agriculture and all that. But now, it is said that their leader who took them from Mapungubwe to Great Zimbabwe was called Shiriedenga. Now Shiri, that's a bird. And we are talking about the African fish eagle. They were led by an eagle, it is said. And wherever the eagle felt, it was like an angelic being to them, felt that the people are now tired, it would disappear, leave them there. But would make sure that all the resources they wanted for the particular time they are there. Then again, when it feels that the people have rested enough now, it would appear and make a call. Go. And then people prepare themselves. Get on the march. But here at Great Zimbabwe, because of all these advantages we're talking about, that's where it disappeared forever. So they knew that, no, this is the place to be. Right, then we have what we call the leopard copy tradition. This is whereby, leaders like chiefs and kings chose to locate their residences on top of a hill like that one. Then they would build their structures there. And it was, people may want to argue. Yeah, I know that's academic. But then the obvious reason was that they wanted to protect themselves. Like defensive. It was defensive. Yes. Just like a leopard, it's on top, it's watching, you see. Yes. So the king had advantages. Now why they built these walls? For the 3 P's that we referred. We are talking about protection from wild animals, human enemies, and also for privacy. Only members of the royal family, their houses inside stone walls. And for prestige. To show that they were the important ones, the elite, you see now. But common people built their houses elsewhere without the need for the walls. So, but why the king, located his residence up on top of the hill was because they wanted to have an overview of, from all directions. If enemies were coming, they had structures up on top, like, natural boulders, where they would make a fire. Obviously, he had soldiers up there and spies. They would make a fire on top of one of the outcrops there, like the natural boulders there. And then that would alert the people around if enemies were coming. So they see the smoke. Then they know, we're surrounded. you know. So it was strategic for defensive reasons. Yes. And then we hear from some Portuguese documents that the last known king to rule Great Zimbabwe was called Nyasimbo Mtota. They say he had more than 200 wives. Now, this man would not live up there with any one of his wives, although he had so many of them, but would not entertain wives up there. Only when probably he wanted one or two of them that day would he take one, take two. The wives were in the valley enclosures. That's the junior wives. How he ever got to have so many wives? This was such a big kingdom. It's like I was saying, straight into some parts of Mozambique, South Africa, Botswana, all of Zimbabwe. Now, he had to have, like in the modern day sense of a governor, you have the president, state ministers in every other place. Those we call them tributary chiefs, vassal chiefs. These would prove that they were still loyal, subservient to this very powerful king who was here. They're giving him tribute in form of wives, livestock, cattle, and labor. The people who came to do the stones, the quarrying, the transportation of the stones, and the building. So it resulted in such a polygamous. He was such a polygamous man. After you get 200 wives. That means maybe you have all those other stations where the wives are coming from. Yes. So you end up having, and also they used to inherit the wives of the previous king. Because there's a question about, okay, this king has 200 wives. What happens in the event that he dies? The king was chosen from the first wife, the firstborn son of the first wife of the king would automatically become the king. But suppose the father dies, then the son takes over as a new king. He would only respect his own mother. The rest of his father's wives were his. So he would amass him. He have so many of them. Okay, right. So that resulted in this state having more than overpopulation in the later days of Great Zimbabwe. Overpopulation, people now competing for farming land, grazing land for the animals. And they also say that during the reign of the seventh king was called King Chibata Matosi. That word alone, Chibata Matosi, the one who handles dirty, but it's a king. How? These names had meanings. Chibata Matosi. Metaphorically, they were saying the man's hands were dirty. He could have killed an innocent person, taken another man's wife, things like that. So they were saying that's why we're experiencing these problems. They did not have a scientific explanation as to why in the later days of Great Zimbabwe, during his reign, they were now having droughts. The crops were not doing well. But the scientific explanation is that these people were multiplying. And then they were growing the same type of crop year in, year out for 300 years. The soils were now exhausted. So in the later years, these people were experiencing droughts. Also, people were contracting diseases, bacterial diseases like cholera, typhoid, diarrhea, and dysentery. Why? They were using bush toilets. And with the growth in population, everybody is using that bush, the other one is using the same bush, you contract diseases like that. People will die. So it was either called Chibata Matosi or Chikura Wajigambeu, that's Shona form. The land has eaten up our seed. So there were droughts. Explain the droughts. So it's because of this king. He has done something against the spirits. That's why we're having all these problems. And then it was time to consider better places to go. But during the reign of this seventh king, he had a favorite son called Nyatsimba Mutota. Now Nyatsimba Mutota would accompany the traders to the Indian Ocean to do trade. He would also accompany hunters when they went out to get ivory from elephants and even animal skins. He would also accompany, the warriors when they went out to raid or to discipline in any one of, the kings who did not want to pay tribute, for example. So he knew of better places to go after Zimbabwe. But because there were so many of them, the sons, it was unfortunate. Simba Mtoda said he was born much later, after the other brothers from the junior wives were already born. So when time finally came that the Chibata Matosi, his father, died, and he was supposed to be made a king, there were civil wars here in Great Zimbabwe. They started to fight over, succession. But he was a good fighter. This man was a fighter, yes. But he considered also that, why should I stay here for? No, the droughts, people are dying, animals, and also animals, livestock. Because now the population had grown. Ironically, we said, among other things, these people were also attracted by the availability of the granite stock. But when the population grew, the space that was supposed to be used for farming was occupied by the granite. So what it meant was, and even also grazing land. So what it meant was the cattle herders had to drive their animals far away from human habitation. And in that process now, they met dangerous animals like the buffaloes. And they were contracting diseases. They also died. Of foot and mouth, anthrax and other livestock diseases. Yes. So now, they were saying, all this is happening because they did not have, I'm trying to emphasize this, a scientific explanation as to why all these problems were befalling them like that. Yes. They always referred to the spirit. They were so superstitious as to think that something is about the king. He has done something wrong. But this was a natural phenomenon. Yes, you see. Now, so when he was facing these problems, and he chose to leave Great Zimbabwe, he went to the north, took his people. Those who were still allegiant to him, took them to the north, Zambezi Valley area. Yes. But along the way, he made some resistance from two tribes, the Tonga people and the Tavara. But since he had such a strategy as a fighter, he defeated them, absorbed them. They gave him a praise name, Munu Mutapa, a master conqueror, a master pillager. So then, when we got up there, his kingdom was known as the Munu Mutapa kingdom. That's the last known king. He was the founder of the Munu Mutapa kingdom. Then, obviously, these other ones who were opposing him, the next to leave Great Zimbabwe was called Torwa. He was a fighter also. Togwa. That's Kugwa, we fight. Yes, that was his name. This man left, going to the west, Bulawayo side. He established his capital at what we call Kami today, Kami ruins. It's also a World Heritage Site. Then the next, after Torwhite left, was called Dombo. Dombo, stone. Stone, that's Dombo. Dombo. Rock, stone, whatever, yes. He also left going to the west, but he never really reached where Torwhite had gone to Kami. He established his capital at what we call today Danamombe. Danamombe, called the cattle. He was such a magician. He had a stick. He would just point at a cow like that. If it was brown, it would turn probably into black. Then he claims it as he is. Because cattle wealth during those days defined you as a man. That was like to show status as a wealthy man. Yes. So he stole a lot of cattle in that way. He was a magician. Changamire Dombo. We call Changamire Dombo. Changamire. That's like in the modern day sense, we say an emir. He was given this name by the Swahilis, the Arabs. Changamire. Emir. Somebody who is big. He's the first man to defeat the Portuguese. Yes. With the primitive, weapons that he had. It is said that he defeated the Portuguese at a place called Dambarare. Because the Portuguese later came and started to trade with these people. They wanted the gold. So they overtook the Chinese and the Arabs. How? The Portuguese would not wait for the people from Great Zimbabwe or from Ntapa, from whichever state, to go to the Indian Ocean. The Portuguese would come to the court, do their trade there, settle there, and they're doing trade. They're getting a lot of gold from them, you see. But at some point, we have conflicts. These are superior weapons. The Chakamire Dombo defeated them. That's the first recorded battle that we hear about. He was a magician. Right, so that's how then Great Zimbabwe declined. There were some problems, like we mentioned, shortage of land, droughts, diseases, livestock dying, civil wars, fighting themselves. That's how